Now, Ukraine are, well, they're in pursuit of its first ballistic missile in the city of Dnipro, a plant there. George Grylls knows a lot about this now. He's the defense and political correspondent. He's visited the factory where this missile is being created. Hello, George.
Hi there.
Hi, tell us more about the production, the development of what would be, I guess, a powerful weapon.
So it's worth thinking about the political context right now. Donald Trump is about to become US president, and he's said that he wants to end the war in Ukraine, and he wants peace negotiations to start. Now, the Ukrainians want NATO membership, but it seems pretty unlikely that they'll get it. So they've got to think about other ways of deterrence. Bear in mind, Russia invaded for the first time in 2014. They invaded again in 2022. Even if the fighting stops, what's to stop the Russians invading again, having another crack at Kyiv? And what Zelensky is thinking about now is building up weapons that are sufficiently powerful, not necessarily nuclear weapons, but something that is a credible deterrence. That means Putin thinks twice about invading Ukraine again. And to that end, he's looking specifically at ballistic missiles.
Right, very basic question then. What is a ballistic missile, George, and why would it be such a potent addition to Ukraine's armory?
A ballistic missile is one that kind of follows an arc. Its trajectory is going up, as opposed to a cruise missile that kind of goes flatter, closer to the Earth's surface. And it's a very destructive, it's a very powerful weapon. If you think about the kind of, Russia's most powerful weapons and the US's most powerful weapons, how do they kind of deploy their nuclear bombs? Well, they're carried on ballistic missiles. And Dnipro, where I was in Ukraine, was actually during the Soviet Union the kind of heart of this ballistic missile production. So during the Cold War, it was the center where all the Soviet Union's kind of ballistic missiles and most potent weapons were made.
Yeah, I mean, there was some reporting in the Times not so long ago, George, about certainly a report to the Ukrainian leadership about the possibility of developing a crude nuclear-armed weapon. Is there any more on that?
Well, 30 years ago, Ukraine signed something called the Budapest Memorandum, where they gave up their this was after the breakup of the Soviet Union, and Ukraine basically inherited from the Soviet Union a number of nuclear weapons, and they agreed to give them up in exchange for security assurances from the US, the UK, and America. And funnily enough, they think that was a bit of a mistake in retrospect because they didn't get many security assurances from Russia. So the question for them is, what sort of deterrence can they build up? A nuclear weapon's a bit of a stretch. But I put it this way, I don't think Zelensky would say no if he could suddenly magic one.
Yeah, I think the suggestion was using plutonium fuel in a crude way as in the warhead of a missile. But it was a suggestion, and Zelensky himself isn't at least talking that way, is he? Now, the Ukrainians that you're talking to, George, how do they feel about the future with Donald Trump coming into the White House? Do they feel in any way resigned to the likelihood of losing that key American support and maybe seeing European support weakening too?
Well, there was a recent poll that found a majority of Ukrainians now favor a peace deal negotiated as soon as possible. But, it hasn't really reached the level of being an open political discussion here in Kyiv. It's a bit of a taboo still, because it means acknowledging that Ukraine has lost a significant portion of its territory, and that the sacrifices of a lot of people who died trying to liberate that territory might have been in vain, at least for now. So that's a very difficult political tightrope for Zelensky to walk if he does want to kind of pursue this ceasefire. But there are signs that he's starting to kind of roll the pitch for that. He said the other day he conceded that it was very unlikely that Ukraine could win back, those occupied parts of Luhansk and Donetsk. And so he does appear to be kind of resigned almost, or starting to be resigned. But then the key question is the security guarantees. What is to prevent Russia from having another go at Ukraine? And so that is why they are building long-range drones. That's why they're building long-range ballistic missiles, because that means that perhaps if there is a pause in fighting, and then Putin's kind of, builds his troops again in a couple of years to have another go, well, he would have to contemplate, for example, Moscow coming under Ukrainian attack. And that's not talking about Western weapons supplied to Ukraine, that's domestically produced weapons in Ukraine.
George, thank you so much for joining us. George Grylls there.
And I'm proud to announce today the commitment of a new Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative package worth nearly $1 billion. Now, that package will provide Ukraine with more drones, more rockets for its HIMARS systems, and more support for crucial maintenance and sustainment. And that brings the total of U.S. security assistance committed to Ukraine since February 2022 to more than $62 billion. That's because we understand that Putin's assault on Ukraine is a warning. As I said in Kyiv in October, we are seeing a sneak preview of a world built by tyrants and thugs. A chaotic world, violent world, carved into spheres of influence. A world where bullies trample their smaller neighbors, and a world where aggressors force free people to live in fear. So we can continue to stand up to the Kremlin, or we can let Putin have his way and condemn our children and grandchildren to live in a world of chaos and conflict. This administration has made its choice, and so has a bipartisan coalition in Congress. The next administration must make its own choice. But from this library, from this podium, I am confident that President Reagan would have stood on the side of Ukraine, American security, and human freedom. Today's U.S. military is an extraordinary gathering of volunteers, brave men and women of every race, color, and creed. America's greatest strategic asset has always been the talents of the American people. And we are stronger when we welcome every qualified patriot who is eager to serve. That's not just a matter of national principle, it's a matter of national security. The U.S. military is relentless about excellence and merit. Our promotion process is ruthless by necessity and by design. We do not lower our standards, and those who want to join us must raise their game. Now, American democracy is not a sprint, but a relay race. And we are preparing to pass the baton yet again. And I am proud of the progress made by American leadership. But as this year and this administration draws to a close, America is positioned to stand strong. Our alliances have been renewed and reinforced. Our recruiting trends point upward. Our investments in the future are vast, and our military reflects the full strength of the great democracy that it defends. So the baton will soon be passed, and others will decide the course ahead. And I hope that they will build on the strength that we have forged over the past 4 years. Thank you very much. May God continue to bless the United States of America.